Chapter 39:16. Faced with everyone's guesses, Mo Yunjue did not even bat an eye at them, as if this had nothing to do with him. He had never thought that he would be so popular after coming to Penglai Palace. To other men, this might be a very enjoyable thing, but to him, it was just trouble. Because of this, he rarely went to other places other than the cultivation area and his residence to avoid attracting more trouble. As for the Suingxue that everyone was talking about, he only remembered that there was such a person. He didn't even know her name. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest noticed this, they couldn't help but quicken their step. Since it was true, they would only attract unnecessary trouble if they continued to move forward together. It was better for them to separate. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest quickened their steps, a voice suddenly rang out from Suingxue's group. I never thought that Junior Mo, who has been in the limelight recently, would also be a liar. What a pity. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but stop in their track. Their gazes turned towards the cultivator who had spoken. Suingxue and the rest clearly didn't expect someone to suddenly speak and immediately turned their heads. After seeing the person who had spoken, Suingxue's face darkened. Zheng Haipeng, why are you causing trouble for no reason? He Bingrue couldn't help reprimanding him. Zheng Haipeng glanced at He Bingrue, but his gaze couldn't help but land on Suingxue. When he saw that Suingxue had her head lowered and didn't speak, the unhappiness in his heart became even stronger. What? Did I say something wrong? Zheng Haipeng looked unconvinced. After glancing coldly at Mo Yunjue, he said, previously, when Yingxue went to ask him, he clearly said that he had no intention of coming to the training ground. Yet, we met here today. If this isn't a lie, then what is? Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest frowned slightly. Their gazes landed on Zheng Haipeng. They never thought that such a thing would happen at such a time. Let's go. Mo Yunjue's face was cold. He had no intention of paying attention to Zheng Haipeng's words, as if the person Zheng Haipeng was talking about was not him. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. Since Mo Yunjue didn't have any objections, they didn't care anymore. When Zheng Haipeng saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were planning to leave, he became even more motivated. I was wondering how powerful he was. He's just a coward. He doesn't even dare to speak now. I really don't know if those women who like him are blind. Zheng Haipeng secretly spat, his face full of disdain. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but frown. They all knew that this matter had nothing to do with Mo Yunjue. Previously, when Suingxue had gone to find Mo Yunjue, they hadn't mentioned going to the training ground. Therefore, it was reasonable for Mo Yunjue to say such words. It was only after they had mentioned this matter that Mo Yunjue had agreed. It was also unexpected for them to meet here today. Chapter 39:17. This Zheng Haipeng is also an inner palace disciple, and his abilities are not bad. Among Suingxue's pursuers, he's one of the most famous. Basically, everyone knows about him. However, Suingxue doesn't seem to have any feelings for him, so even if he pursues her passionately, Suingxue has never responded, Renzime said slowly. Hearing that, Shangguan Yingying instantly understood. So he's treating Yunju as his love rival. He has pursued Suingxue for so long without any result. On the contrary, Suingxue directly invited Yunju, so it's normal that he can't take it. Renzime nodded slightly. That's right. He must be extremely angry after knowing about this. Now that he's met junior brother Mo, it's natural for him to mock him. This person is definitely crazy. What does him not being able to pursue Suingxue have to do with Yunju? Shangguan Yingying revealed a look of disdain. He can't pursue her because he doesn't have the ability, yet he's blaming others for being charming. What a joke. Forget it, let's go. Mo Yunjue's brows revealed a hint of displeasure, but more of it was coldness. He had no thoughts about Suingxue and didn't plan to get into any trouble because of this woman. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest frowned. Zheng Haipeng's words were undoubtedly provoking them, but it was more of a provocation between love rivals. To this, if Mo Yunjue could take it, they naturally didn't plan to stand out. After all, Zheng Haipeng was someone who liked to cause trouble. If they were to bother with him, there would be a lot of trouble. Let's not bother with these senseless people and just leave. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was cold. She hated this kind of man the most. Only the person involved knew about love. If he couldn't pursue her, he would start to find trouble with others. This was a problem of tolerance. When Zheng Haipeng saw that Mo Yunjue was ignoring him, he couldn't help but become even more anxious. Yunjue, look at this guy. He's just a coward. I've already said so much, and he still doesn't dare to bother with me. What exactly is it about him that made you have a whole new level of respect for him? Zheng Haipeng looked at Su Yunjue with a pleased and puzzled expression. Mo Yunjue not paying any attention to him was an act of a coward. Coincidentally, he could use this chance to perform well in front of Su Yunjue and let her know who was the real man between him and Mo Yunjue. Su Yunjue's expression was already very ugly, and when she heard Zheng Haipeng's words, she became even more displeased. Su Yunjue raised her head and saw Mo Yunjue's cold expression from beginning to end, as if he wasn't concerned about this matter. She couldn't help feeling a chill in her heart. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to develop feelings for a man. She didn't expect the other party to ignore her. It really hurt her self-esteem. Could it be that to Mo Yunjue, she really wasn't special at all? His hands gradually clenched under his sleeves, tightly pinching his sleeves. A myriad of emotions flashed through his mind. Zheng Haipeng, we already didn't provoke you, yet you keep provoking us time and time again. What is the meaning of this? Chu Jinfeng looked at Zheng Haipeng unhappily. It was one thing for Zheng Haipeng to quarrel with him, but now he actually said that Mo Yunjue was a coward. Wasn't this a little too much? Chapter 39:18. Chu Jinfeng frowned, unable to hide the disgust in his eyes. He had never had a good impression of Zheng Haipeng. It was fine that they didn't interact with each other normally, but he had always disliked Zheng Haipeng's way of doing things. Who would have thought that Zheng Haipeng would take the initiative to provoke him and even go overboard with his words? Zheng Haipeng, it's your own problem if you can't get what you want. Why are you implicating others? Am I wrong? Zheng Haipeng sneered. I've already said so much, but he still hasn't reacted. If he's not a coward, then what is he? This kind of person isn't worthy of Yunjue's liking. I just want Yunjue to see the truth. Hearing that, Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. He hadn't known Mo Yunjue for long, so he didn't know much about him. He only felt that Mo Yunjue was usually very cold and didn't like to talk, but since he was a member of their team, he naturally couldn't stand to see others humiliating him. However, Zheng Haipeng's words had already gone overboard, but Mo Yunjue still didn't have any reaction. Chu Jinfeng really didn't know if he should say that Mo Yunjue was magnanimous or something. Not only Chu Jinfeng, but the cultivators in Su Yunjue's team also sighed in their hearts when they saw this scene. They originally thought that Mo Yunjue was very strong and should be a real man. Who would have thought that he liked to swallow his pride so much? It was really unbelievable. Yunjue, although Mo Yunjue is indeed very handsome, I think Zheng Haipeng is right. He has already said so much, but he still doesn't have any reaction. He's not like a man at all. He Bingrue couldn't help but say. Su Yunjue bit her lips and looked at Mo Yunjue with a complicated gaze. She also didn't expect such a thing to happen, and his reaction was also unbelievable. Compared to everyone's doubts, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. Others didn't understand, but they understood very well. The reason why Mo Yunjue didn't have any reaction was because he didn't care about this matter at all. It also proved that he didn't have any feelings for Su Yunjue, but that didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. This was because Mo Yunjue's personality was different from others. When others got angry, they might argue, but Mo Yunjue wouldn't argue because he would kill the moment he made a move. It was just that the others didn't understand his temperament. He believed that after they understood, Zheng Haipeng would regret offending him. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking, Mo Yunjue's figure suddenly moved, like a bolt of lightning, quickly attacking Zheng Haipeng. Bang! To be! Zheng Haipeng was looking at everyone complacently, already treating Mo Yunjue as a coward. He didn't expect that Mo Yunjue would suddenly make things difficult for him, so he didn't have time to react and was sent flying. Seeing this, everyone present couldn't help but be stunned. No one had expected that Mo Yunjue, who hadn't said a word, would suddenly make a move and be so ruthless. Su Yingxue and He Bingrue looked at each other in dismay. A second ago, they thought that Mo Yunjue didn't have any temper, but in the next second, they felt that Mo Yunjue's temper wasn't small at all. Chapter 39-19. Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng were also stunned on the spot. They looked at Mo Yunjue with a dull gaze. This reaction was completely different from his previous attitude, so much so that they couldn't react for a while. Shangguan Yingying was also stunned. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva as she looked at Mo Yunjue in astonishment. Yunjue, it's fine if you don't make a move, but once you make a move. Looking at Shangguan Yingying's stunned expression, Ziren chuckled and whispered in her ear, Yingying, you forgot that Yunjue is the young master of Shitian Pavilion. Don't you know how Shitian Pavilion usually acts? Shangguan Yingying immediately understood what was going on when she heard this. Shitian Pavilion had always been a swift and decisive force. They didn't talk much, but every time they did something, it was very shocking. It seemed that Mo Yunjue was indeed worthy of being the young master of Shitian Pavilion. His way of doing things was completely the same as his sex. Zheng Haipeng was lying on the ground. He felt that his internal organs had almost shifted under that palm. His body was burning with pain, and even breathing became difficult. Just as he was about to sit up, Zheng Haipeng spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his face quickly became pale, and his spirit was dispirited to the extreme. He looked at Mo Yunjue in disbelief. Although he knew that Mo Yunjue had obtained the inheritance of the Demon Training Tower, in his opinion, Mo Yunjue's strength shouldn't be very strong. However, when the other party made a move like this, he knew that he had completely underestimated Mo Yunjue's strength. This kind of strength was definitely above the Starlight Realm. At least, he wasn't Mo Yunjue's opponent at all. Unfortunately, even if he knew this at this moment, it was too late. The intense pain in his body told him that he was seriously injured, and he couldn't even stand up. At this time, Mo Yunjue coldly glanced at Zheng Haipeng, and then said to Ren Zimei and the others, against this kind of trash, there's no need to waste your breath. It's just a waste of time. His handsome face was full of indifference, as if this matter had not attracted his attention at all, as if he had just casually dealt with an insignificant grasshopper. We can go now. He had originally planned to ignore it, but Zheng Haipeng was relentless and kept looking for trouble. Ren Zimei and the others couldn't stand it anymore. Since that was the case, he might as well directly solve this problem and get it done once and for all. Otherwise, there would be flies buzzing around his ears. Ren Zimei and the others couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. The two smiled faintly and said, since the matter has been resolved, then let's go. All right. Shangguan Yingying nodded. Now there's no annoying guy chattering there. Just as everyone was preparing to leave, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said to Su Yingxue and the others, Yunjue indeed didn't have the intention to come to the training ground. It's just that we suddenly talked about it the night before, so he decided to come at the last minute. He's not someone who likes to lie. Mo Yunjue didn't like to explain, but she couldn't just let others pin this kind of name on Mo Yunjue's head. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Su Yingxue was slightly stunned, but immediately understood. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't stay any longer, and disappeared from Su Yingxue and the others' sight. Chapter 39:20. When Su Yingxue and the rest came to Zheng Haipeng's side, they saw that Zheng Haipeng's aura was extremely weak. It was obvious that he had suffered a severe injury. Noticing this, everyone's eyes couldn't help but be filled with shock. Mo Yunjue had only casually attacked, yet he was able to injure Zheng Haipeng to such an extent. His abilities were simply too terrifying. However, the next scene was even more out of everyone's expectations. Not long after, Zheng Haipeng actually stopped breathing and died. How could this be? Su Yingshue's eyes shone with disbelief. Mo Yunjue had only attacked once. With Zheng Haipeng's abilities, even if it was a cultivator of the Starlight Realm or above, he would at most be injured. There was absolutely no possibility of him dying. However, Zheng Haipeng had actually died. He Bingrue and the rest were also dumbfounded when they saw this scene. They were even in disbelief, wondering if they had seen wrongly. However, Zheng Haipeng really did not make a sound. Zheng Haipeng actually died just like that? He Bingrue was completely dumbfounded. That Mo Yunjue's attack was simply too ruthless. Killing him in one strike, he didn't even give him a chance to live. The rest of the people were also in a daze. What Zheng Haipeng had said previously was indeed overboard, and normal people would not be able to accept it. However, to kill him in one strike, this Mo Yunjue was indeed powerful. This newcomer Junior Mo is truly impressive. His attack was swift and decisive, not giving anyone a chance to regret. Zheng Haipeng's death is truly unjust. This is too unbelievable. From what I see, this Junior Mo is also not someone to be trifled with. It's better to stay away from him in the future. Everyone sighed. As expected, those who were with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were all abnormal. Even though he was just a newcomer, his abilities were already so strong. No wonder Master Long and the rest had used such high conditions to recruit him. At this moment, everyone understood that Mo Yunjue was someone who did not like to speak, but definitely could not be offended. Otherwise, the other party would not even give you a chance to explain and would immediately take your life. Yingshui, this Mo Yunjue is too scary. He Bingrue couldn't help but hold Su Yingshue's hand. Killing the other party without a word, this method is simply terrifying. Previously, when Mo Yunjue didn't speak, she thought that Mo Yunjue didn't have any masculinity. Now, she knew how scary Mo Yunjue was. However, Su Yingshue's eyes were shining with admiration. Previously, when everyone thought that Mo Yunjue was a coward, she didn't believe them at all. From her point of view, Mo Yunjue had no reason to fear Zheng Haipeng. When Mo Yunjue made his move, she only felt that Mo Yunjue was too domineering. Not talking nonsense and directly attacking was the way a hero should act. At that moment, Su Yingxue only felt her heart sprouting. When she thought of how Mo Yunjue attacked, she felt her heart thumping uncontrollably. When He Bingrue saw Su Yingshue's expression, she couldn't help but wave her hand in front of her eyes. Yingshui, what are you thinking about? Hearing this, Su Yingxue came back to her senses. Her beautiful face blushed slightly as she shook her head. Nothing. Chapter 39:21. Su Yingxue blushed. She felt that Mo Yunjue was the man of her dreams. He had such powerful strength and a swift and decisive style. He was the type she liked the most. That serious look was deeply imprinted in her heart. She felt that he was exceptionally handsome. Seeing Su Yingxue like that, He Bingrue understood her thoughts and couldn't help but shake her head helplessly. Looking at your situation, it seems that you have really fallen for him. Before today, I might have only had a good impression of him, but after today's incident, I really like him. Su Yingxue clasped her hands together, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Her mind was filled with Mo Yunjue's appearance, and she felt that her life was suddenly filled with brilliance. Her entire person was immersed in pink happiness. This Mo Yunjue doesn't look like someone easy to deal with. He was so ruthless the moment he made a move. He's definitely a ruthless character, He Bingrue couldn't help but say. Suing Xue nodded. I know what you're saying, but I feel that it's precisely because of his appearance that he's exceptionally charming. You're right. He's indeed more manly than ordinary men. After thinking for a moment, He Bingrue agreed with Suing Xue's opinion. After all, compared to Zheng Haipeng, who only knew how to talk big, Mo Yunjue's way of doing things was much more domineering. In my opinion, this Mo Yunjue is also a person of few words, so there must be very few women who can get close to him. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying already have lovers, and Ren Zimei is now with Chu Jinfeng. As such, Mo Yunjue is completely alone. Since you like him, you have to seize the opportunity. There are many women in Penglai Palace who admire him, He Bingrue said. Suing Xue nodded with a smile. I won't give up. After Bailey Hongzhuang and her group left Suing Xue's group, they continued to move forward. I didn't expect Zheng Haipeng to be so narrow-minded. He deserves to be taught a lesson today. It's just that this fellow usually has a big mouth. I don't know if he will spread it around later. Ren Zimei frowned. She had a certain understanding of Zheng Haipeng. This guy had always been a blabbermouth. Many things would change completely once they reached his mouth. This time, Mo Yunjue had seriously injured him. Whether it was because of his face or other reasons, he would not let this matter go so easily. Zheng Haipeng has already learned his lesson. I believe that he won't have the guts in the future. Otherwise, if Yunju attacks again, wouldn't his injuries be even more serious? Chu Jinfeng said with a smile. However, what Mo Yunjue said next stunned them. You don't have to worry about that, because he won't be able to speak in the future. As soon as Mo Yunjue said this, Ren Zimei and the others were stunned. For a moment, they couldn't understand the true meaning behind his words. Junior brother Mo, according to what you said, could it be that Zheng Haipeng? Ren Ziheng couldn't help but say. That's right. He's already a dead man. Mo Yunjue's expression was indifferent and cold, as if he was talking about something insignificant. Gulp. Chu Jinfeng swallowed his saliva and looked at Mo Yunjue in a daze. Chapter 39-22. Looking at the stunned expressions of Ren Ziheng and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say, This is Yunjue's usual style, you'll get used to it. As soon as these words were spoken, Ren Ziheng and the others could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang, then looked at Mo Yunjue, and then nodded their heads. They had also seen through it. Yunjue rarely speaks and has always directly taken action to solve the problem. Chu Jinfeng could not help but cup his hands towards Mo Yunjue. Junior brother Mo, I admire you, I admire you. Noticing Chu Jinfeng's look of disbelief, Mo Yunjue could not help but explain. That kind of guy is destined to be an opponent who likes to find trouble. Instead of wasting time, it's better to get it done once and for all. I've never liked trouble. Junior brother Mo is right, this is indeed a good way to get it done once and for all. Chu Jinfeng praised. Mo Yunjue was really a straightforward person. When he explained this reason, he could not refute it at all. After continuing to move forward for a while, Ren Ziheng finally said, Let's stop here. If we continue to go deeper, the skeleton army will be even larger. Let's see if we can deal with it first, then we'll decide whether to continue or not. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded. Okay. Immediately after, everyone rested here. After rushing for a day, they had naturally consumed some energy. At night, they had to be on guard against the skeleton army that could appear at any time. Naturally, they had to adjust themselves to their best condition to be able to deal with it better. What's more, after arriving here, the probability of encountering the skeleton army would greatly increase. Whether they would be so lucky again, even they themselves were not sure. The curtain of night slowly fell and the entire training ground was pitch black. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all gathered together, cautiously paying attention to their surroundings, on guard against the skeleton army that could appear at any time. The surroundings were quiet and not the slightest sound could be heard. It was so quiet that it was somewhat frightening. This person waited quietly and did not hear any movement for a long time. Just as everyone was thinking about whether their luck would be so good today, suddenly, a sound attracted everyone's attention. Kacha. Crack. Hearing these soft sounds, Renziheng and the others couldn't help but look at each other, and a trace of seriousness quickly appeared on their faces. The skeleton army is about to appear. Hearing Renziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately became serious. Every time an army of skeletons appeared, it was extremely terrifying. They had to be careful when dealing with it. As the sound grew louder and louder, everyone realized that the sound came from behind them. It was still some distance away from them. The skeleton army is here? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows. His eyes were filled with curiosity. He had heard about this skeleton army long ago. It was only today that he had the opportunity to see it with his own eyes. Di Baichen nodded. They're already here. Although they're still some distance away from us, it won't be long before they reach us. We have to be alert and be careful. I can only hope that this skeleton army comes from one direction and will not appear from other directions. Otherwise, if we are surrounded like last time, the situation will be terrible. Chu Jinfeng sighed. Chapter 39-23. Let's go over and take a look. Di Baichen's eyes glinted as he spoke in a deep voice. Hearing this, everyone nodded and moved together, heading towards the direction of the skeleton's voice. However, when they were halfway there, they suddenly heard someone calling for help. Help! Is there anyone? Save me! Hearing this voice, everyone looked at each other. It seemed that someone had already met the skeleton army before them. Based on the cry for help, the other party's ability was obviously not as strong as the skeleton army. They might have already been surrounded by the skeleton army and were in a difficult situation. Someone is in danger, let's go and take a look. Renzimei's face turned grave as she quickly spoke. The next moment, everyone increased their speed and rushed forward. However, when they saw the scene in front of them, they felt helpless. I didn't expect it to be Suingxue and the others. This is really not an ordinary coincidence. Bailey Hongzhuang's Black Phoenix eyes flashed with a touch of surprise, and she couldn't help but sigh. Everyone felt helpless. Today, they had purposely changed directions to separate from Suingxue and the rest. Who would have thought that they would still meet in the end? However, it was a pity that they did not know that Suingxue had done all of this on purpose. Ever since Suingxue confirmed her feelings, she wanted to catch up with Mo Yunjue and the rest. Even though Mo Yunjue did not have any feelings for her, as long as they met, they would still have some feelings for each other. At least, she was much better than the other girls who had never interacted with Mo Yunjue before. However, they did not expect Mo Yunjue and the rest to be so fast. They had already caught up with them at their fastest speed, but they still could not catch up. When night fell, they could only find a random place to rest. However, their luck was not very good. They had only stopped to rest at the same spot and coincidentally met the skeleton army. Furthermore, the skeleton army appeared directly under their feet, giving them no time to react. A few cultivators had already fallen. This kind of situation was what cultivators feared the most. Before they could react, they were surrounded. Suingxue and He Bingrui's speed was not bad, and they happened to be standing at the periphery of the pit, so they didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, the speed at which these skeletons appeared was simply too fast. Even if they tried their best to escape, they were still unable to fight back. Thus, they could only shout for help. They could only hope that Mo Yunjue and the others weren't too far away and could hear their cries for help. Yingxue, what should we do? He Bingrui's expression was extremely ugly. She didn't think that their luck would be so bad today. If they couldn't find any reinforcements, it was very likely that they would be completely wiped out again. Su Yingxue shook her head, a hint of panic on her face. I don't know. We can only try our best to escape with everyone. Everyone, run. This time, the range of the skeleton army is very scary. I'm afraid that there will be more liches. If we don't leave now, we won't have another chance later. In the team, a rather experienced cultivator hurriedly shouted out. Chapter 39-24. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at Su Yingxue and the rest, who were escaping at full speed. Even though they had already used their fastest speed, the skeleton army was like a swarm of locusts, coming out from the ground endlessly. Even though their movements didn't seem fast, they were actually very fast. If the situation continued to develop, the possibility of Su Yingxue and the rest escaping wasn't high. Su Yingxue and the rest are really unlucky. The place where they were resting just happened to be where the hole appeared. In such a short period of time, only 6 out of 10 people are left. Renzime couldn't help but lament. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest observed the situation in front of them silently. From what they could see, there was only one hole for the time being. Even though there were quite a number of skeletons, the situation was definitely much better than what they had encountered previously. So, this is the skeleton army. Mo Yunjue stared at the numerous skeletons that had appeared in front of him. It was as though the end of the world had arrived, and everything in front of him was darkness. The eerie white skeletons walked in the darkness, giving off cracking sounds. Everywhere they passed by, not even a blade of grass grew, and not a single living thing was left behind. The situation was indeed as described by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, making them tremble in fear. However, only after witnessing the situation with their own eyes would they understand how shocking it was. Di Baichen nodded. The abilities of these skeletons are very strong. Luckily, there are many cultivators on Penglai Island blocking them. Otherwise, if they were to go to the outside world, the consequences would be unimaginable. Every skeleton had a cultivation above the purple realm, and cultivators above the purple realm in the outside world were already rare existences. If these skeletons were to appear in the outside world, it would definitely be a disaster. Hearing that, Mo Yunjue's gaze turned grave, and he instantly understood the meaning behind Di Baichen's words. Indeed, compared to these dead things, the cultivators in the outside world can't even withstand a single blow. Should we go and help? Renzime couldn't help but ask. If it was any other cultivator, they would have gone to help at the first moment, but they hadn't expected it to be Su Yingxue and the rest. This would depend on Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. At this moment, Su Yingxue and the rest, who were running for their lives, noticed Bailey Hongzhuang and her group standing far away and instantly saw hope. Help! He Bingrui hurriedly shouted. Junior brother Mo, help us! Su Yingxue also said. Renzime subconsciously looked at Mo Yunjue. She still needed to see what Mo Yunjue was thinking. Compared to Su Yingxue's fervent gaze, Mo Yunjue's face was filled with coldness. As the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, it was normal for him to kill people, but to save people, he would never have such an idea. From the beginning to the end, there was only one exception to the idea of saving people, and that was Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. Other than that, the life and death of others were the same to him. After noticing Mo Yunjue's expression, Renzime couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Junior brother Mo's personality was really cold. He didn't even care when a beauty threw herself at him. She really admired his personality. Chapter 39-25. Hearing Renziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. They had long heard of this point. Thinking about it, in such a dangerous training ground, if the Inner Palace disciples didn't help each other, the casualty rate would be even higher. In the next moment, Renziheng and Chu Jinfeng quickly rushed towards Su Yingxue and the rest. Following Renziheng and Chu Jinfeng's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest didn't delay any longer and immediately followed closely behind them. When Suing Xue and the rest who were running for their lives saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest start to move, a ray of hope appeared on their faces. Ing Xue, junior brother Mo and the rest are here to save us, He Bingrui said excitedly. Suing Xue nodded excitedly. Luckily they aren't far from where we are. Now we're saved. This Mo Yunjue isn't as cold as we thought. At least he's still willing to help us. Who knows, maybe it's because of you. He Bingrui smiled. Hearing that, Suing Xue was slightly stunned. She couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue, who was rushing towards them, and said, "That shouldn't be the case. If he really had feelings for me, he wouldn't have been so cold before. A cold person like him would naturally be like that on normal days. However, it's different at this crucial moment. Anyway, I believe you'll definitely be able to capture him." Suing Xue's face flushed red as she said happily, "I hope that's the case." The speed of Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest was very fast. In a few blinks of an eye, they had already arrived beside Suing Xue and the rest. Martial techniques were instantly executed from their hands and attacked the skeletons behind them. Boom! Boom! A series of earth-shattering sounds resounded as dazzling martial skills were displayed. Multicolored lights blossomed, illuminating the entire night as if it was daytime. Under this attack, the skeletons instantly turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest joined the battle, the situation of Suing Xue and the rest eased up a little. Instantly, they felt the pressure lessen, and the sense of urgency dissipated. "Ren Ziheng, thank you," someone in Suing Xue's team who knew Ren Ziheng expressed his gratitude. They weren't as muddle-headed as Suing Xue. They had clearly noticed that it was Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng who had taken the initiative before Mo Yunjue had come to help. Ren Ziheng waved his hand and said, "We're brothers from the same sect. If you're in danger, we'll naturally come to help. There's no need for thanks. If it weren't for your support, I'm afraid we would have been completely annihilated here today. In short, we will remember this kindness in our hearts. If you need our help in the future, just let us know." "You are welcome." After the 6 people in Suing Xue's team got out of their predicament, they didn't continue to flee. Instead, they started to attack the skeleton army. After all, their goal in coming to the training grounds was to deal with these dead things. Only by killing them would they be able to obtain the corresponding points. Bailey Hongzhuang casually executed martial techniques to attack the skeletons with an indifferent expression. Chapter 39-26. In the team, only Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Mo Yunjue had broken through to the Starlight Realm, so it was naturally easy for the 3 of them to deal with the skeletons. However, it wasn't so easy for Shangguan Yingying and the rest. After all, the difference in strength between them and the skeletons wasn't very big. As such, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 became the main force. Whenever they noticed someone in danger, they would immediately help and resolve the predicament. Even though Suing Xue had been an inner hall disciple for quite some time, her cultivation wasn't very strong. Therefore, she couldn't help but fall into a predicament when dealing with the skeletons. Just as she was about to let the skeletons get close to her, an attack suddenly blossomed beside her and got rid of the skeletons that got close to her. Seeing this scene, Suing Xue couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and subconsciously looked at the person who had attacked. When she saw that the person who had attacked was Mo Yunjue, she couldn't help but be elated. Mo Yunjue had actually helped her. Once she thought of this, Suing Xue couldn't help but feel excited. As a result, the skeletons got close to her again when she was distracted. Mo Yunjue attacked once again. After helping her solve this problem, he flashed and went to help the other cultivators. Suing Xue's cheeks flushed red as an indescribable joy blossomed in her heart. For the first time, she felt that the training ground wasn't that disgusting. On the contrary, she really liked the feeling of fighting. When Shangguan Yingying noticed that Suing Xue had actually started to daydream, she couldn't help but remind her, "Suing Xue, if you continue daydreaming like this, you might lose an arm or a leg in the next second." She also admired Suingxue for being able to be distracted at a time like this. Mo Yunjue was indeed handsome and charming. He was a very famous person in the outside world, so it was normal for young girls to like him. However, there weren't many people who could still be infatuated with him in the middle of a battle. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's reminder, Suingxue came back to her senses. Her expression became a little awkward, and she could only nod her head. Only then did she raise her spirits to deal with the skeletons. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were not idle either. They all ran out of their chaos rings to help out in the battle. It wasn't just them. Di Baichen and the other two's contracted beasts weren't idle either. They all came out to fight alongside their masters. None of the 6 contracted beasts were of low grades, and their appearance together was extremely shocking. Suingxue and the rest looked at this scene in a daze. Although they already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had contracted beasts, they still couldn't help but sigh when they saw them. The scale was simply too astonishing. Not only Suingxue and the rest, but Ren Ziheng and the other 2 also had deep envy in their eyes when they noticed this scene. They had been inner palace disciples for quite some time, but it was a pity that they still hadn't obtained their own contracted beast. It was truly a pity. Only disciples who had outstanding performances in the inner palace could obtain contracted beasts. In comparison, although they had developed quite well in the inner palace, they hadn't reached an extremely outstanding level, so they didn't have the qualifications to obtain contracted beasts. Chapter 39-27. Among the 6 contracted beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts were the strongest. After all, they had been cultivating with Bailey Hongzhuang for a long time. The other 3 contracted beasts were born not long ago. Even though Long Yanwei had used methods to speed up their growth, they still needed some time before they could truly grow up. Even so, the battle prowess they unleashed was not weak. Yingxue, I heard that Mo Yunjue also obtained a contracted beast. I wonder which one belongs to Mo Yunjue? He Bingrue couldn't help but ask after noticing the appearance of the 6 contracted beasts. She was really envious of cultivators who had contracted beasts. Suingxue couldn't help but look at the 6 contracted beasts. She then shook her head. I don't know. However, I believe that his contracted beast should be very strong. Ren Zimei, who was standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang, couldn't help but ask, Junior Sister Bailey, what is Junior Brother Mo's contracted beast? Dark Magic Fox. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. The Dark Magic Fox is still at Master Long's place to speed up its growth. It didn't come this time. I see. A look of understanding appeared on Ren Zimei's face. The Dark Magic Fox is a very rare demonic beast. I didn't expect Junior Brother Mo to have such a contracted beast. This is something that makes people envious. Senior Sister Ren, you will all have one in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Let's hope so. Just as everyone was focused on dealing with the skeleton army, they suddenly realized that the skeletons behind them were no longer ordinary skeletons. Instead, they were skeleton soldiers. Not good. Ren Ziheng frowned as a solemn expression appeared on his face. From the looks of it, the number of skeleton soldiers that are about to appear is quite large. Everyone should be more careful. Those who are weaker, it's best to back off a little. This way, even if you encounter danger, you will still have a chance to escape. The eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others fell on the skeletons in the rear. These skeletons were different from ordinary skeletons. They were also wearing armor, and their majestic appearance was different from ordinary skeletons. Senior Sister Ren, what is the strength of these skeleton soldiers? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. The appearance of the skeleton soldiers did not exceed her expectations. Earlier, Ren Ziheng had already warned them that the strength of the skeleton soldiers they encountered would greatly increase as they ventured deeper. At the same time, the strength of the skeletons would also increase. On the outside, the skeleton soldiers are generally at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Depending on the geographical location, the strength of the skeleton soldiers varies. The skeleton soldiers I met last time were at the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Now that we're in a place that's even deeper than the last time I was here, they might be even stronger than the 6th level of the Purple Realm. We can only understand this after we fight with the skeleton warriors. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly, reminding everyone, the strength of these skeleton soldiers is not simple. Be careful when dealing with them. At this moment, the three beasts approached Bailey Hongzhuang from the periphery, looking like they were ready for battle. However, when this group of skeleton soldiers appeared, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised to find that although these skeletons were dead, they were very orderly. Chapter 39-28. I never thought that these skeletons would be so orderly. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have thought that these skeletons were all dead creatures and were leading the soldiers. When Xiren's eyes flickered with curiosity. Even though he had seen all this before, he still felt that these skeletons were very mystical. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others felt the same way. Indeed, the order displayed by these skeletons is beyond our expectations. Why do we care so much? They're already charging towards us. Let's just kill them. Shangguan Yingying shrugged her shoulders. She did not care about the skeletons' behavior at all. All she wanted was to kill more skeletons in exchange for more points. Now, she only had one thought, and that was to raise her cultivation level as quickly as possible so that she could catch up to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. No matter what, they were a team. If they continued to lag behind, they would need the protection of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. This was not what she wanted. If she wanted to raise her cultivation level as quickly as possible, cultivating in the cultivation area was an excellent way. However, it would consume a lot of points, so she needed to earn more points. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's honest words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others laughed gently before nodding in agreement. You're right, the most important thing now is to destroy these fellows. In the next moment, the Yuan power within Bailey Hongzhuang's body burst forth. She flipped her hands and a martial skill quietly formed. She then attacked the skeleton soldier without hesitation. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. This principle was the same regardless of the time. The skeleton soldier was undoubtedly much more agile than the average skeleton. When it saw Bailey Hongzhuang's attack, it quickly retreated. However, what shocked Bailey Hongzhuang was that she realized that the skeleton soldier was also able to use martial skills. She could not believe it. How could this be? Bailey Hongzhuang stared in astonishment at the scene before her. She had been fighting with the skeletons until now and realized that these skeletons could only use their own strength to fight. They did not know how to dodge or use martial skills. However, this skeleton soldier was actually able to use martial skills. How could she not be astonished? Not only did Bailey Hongzhuang discover this scene, but Ren Ziheng and the others also discovered this, and suddenly they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Senior Brother Ren, have you encountered such a situation before? When Xiren asked aloud. Ren Ziheng shook his head. No, I've never encountered this before. Although the skeleton soldiers we've encountered in the past were much stronger than the average skeleton, we've never encountered a skeleton soldier who could use martial skills. What's going on today? Chu Jinfeng's face flickered with doubt. Clearly, he couldn't believe all of this. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the same time. It seems that it is not only the Lich that has evolved, the skeleton soldiers have also evolved. Di Beichen calmly said. Ren Ziheng's eyes were filled with seriousness. You mean that these skeleton soldiers can only use martial skills after they've evolved? Apart from this reason, I can't think of any other reason. Di Beichen's eyes were deep and complicated. According to this situation, the skeleton army will become stronger and stronger in the future. The pressure on the cultivators will also increase. Chapter 39-29. Following Di Beichen's words, everyone's heart could not help but sink. If the situation was really like this, then they would be under a lot of pressure in the future. How can these skeleton soldiers use martial skills? That's too strange. Shangguan Yingying's face flashed with a puzzled look. Could it be that they practice martial arts together like us? Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and shook her head. Perhaps the martial arts that these people mastered before they died are still engraved in their bones after they died, so they can use it now. As soon as she said this, everyone was slightly stunned. After thinking carefully, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words did make some sense. In that case, there is indeed a possibility. Look, the martial skills that these skeleton soldiers are using are different. If they use the same martial arts, then when they move together like this, they must use the same martial arts, Ren Ziheng said in a deep voice. When we go back, we must quickly report this news. Di Beichen slowly said, in the future, everyone can't choose where to stay based on their previous judgment. We must retreat a little because the strength of these skeletons is no longer what it used to be. The strength of the skeleton soldiers had increased. If everyone still chose the location based on their previous experience in the future, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. The number of cultivators in the Penglai Palace's inner hall was not many, so they could not afford such a loss. Everyone sighed faintly. The skeletons in the training ground were already a headache for everyone. Now that even the skeleton soldiers had evolved, it would be even more troublesome in the future. Let's not think about this for now. Let's deal with the current situation first, Di Beichen said. Everyone only sighed with emotion for a moment, then wholeheartedly entered the battle state. The skeleton soldiers that used martial arts were very difficult to deal with, especially when the level of the martial arts that some of the skeleton soldiers used was not low. When Ziren and the others all felt a lot of pressure. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were more relaxed. After all, the Astral Radiance Realm and the Purple Realm were no longer the same concept, and their strength far surpassed that of Wen Ziren and the others. As a result, the three of them had to put in extra effort during the battle. Not only did they have to deal with their own opponents, but they also had to help others deal with the skeleton soldiers. Under the leadership of the skeleton soldiers, even the ordinary skeletons' battle prowess increased. Large numbers of skeletons fell in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and were completely crushed. Now they deeply felt the threat of this skeleton army. They had to completely destroy it and absolutely couldn't allow it to recover. When the skeleton soldier saw how powerful Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were, it knew that it was no match for them. Immediately, it slapped the ground as if it was summoning something. Looking at the same movement of the skeletons in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other, not knowing what the other was summoning. Master, these skeletons are really getting stranger and stranger. What they do is really like an army. It's amazing. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with amazement. The last time they saw almost all the ordinary skeletons, there were only a few skeleton soldiers, so they completely did not notice this uniform military style. Chapter 39:30. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, we haven't been here for a few months. I didn't expect the skeleton army to have such a huge change. It's really unbelievable. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen beside her. Her black and white eyes flashed with a complicated light. She slowly said, Beichen, I keep feeling that something is wrong. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with the same gaze and said in a deep voice, I have a guess. There should be something extraordinary in this training ground that caused the skeleton soldiers and the Lich to evolve. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Then her eyes widened, revealing a trace of surprise and shock. You're right. There must be a reason for the skeleton soldiers and the Lich's sudden evolution. It's impossible for them to evolve for no reason. If there really is something that's promoting their evolution, it must be something extraordinary. We have to find this thing as soon as possible. Otherwise, if this continues, even the ordinary skeletons will evolve. That's right. Di Beichen nodded. We have to find that thing. However, this training ground is extremely large. I'm afraid it will take some time to find it. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were exchanging views, the skeleton soldiers also stopped moving. Then, they saw the lich crawling out of the pit. So these skeleton soldiers are actually summoning the lich. Xiren said in a deep voice, from this situation, the lich is an existence that is one level higher than the skeleton soldiers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Heavens, how many liches are going to appear? Shangguan Yingying was very calm when she saw the appearance of the lich. However, when she noticed that the number of lich was increasing, she could no longer maintain her calm. Last time, they only encountered 4 lich. It was already very difficult to deal with them. Now, there were a total of 8 lich. Once they thought about the scene of the demonic chant, they felt a headache. Suingxue and the rest were completely stunned when they saw this scene. They had never seen so many lich before. Why are there so many lich? Suingxue's face was filled with shock. Once these lich chant, the strength of the skeletons will increase. With 8 lich stacked together, the effect is extremely shocking. He Bingrue's face was a little pale. However, after noticing Mo Yunjue and the rest at the side, she calmed down. At least, with 3 cultivators at the Star Radiance realm and above, their safety would be greatly increased. Otherwise, if they encountered such a situation, she would definitely run. Yingxue, you are one of the very few cultivators who are good at sound attacks. Take advantage of today's opportunity to perform well and let Mo Yunjue see you in a new light. He Bingrue's face revealed a trace of a smile. This was an opportunity that the heavens had specially created for Suingxue. Bingrue, what time is it now? You still have the mood to think about this. Suingxue shook her head helplessly. However, she couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. Chapter 39-31. Compared to Mo Yunjue, she couldn't help but feel that she wasn't as good as Mo Yunjue. Now, cultivators who were good at sound attacks were very popular in Penglai Palace. Because of this, her status in the inner palace had greatly increased and she had become a popular figure. No matter which team it was, they would think of ways to invite her to the training grounds. If she could show her outstanding side in front of Mo Yunjue today, perhaps Mo Yunjue would have a whole new level of respect for her. When she thought of Mo Yunjue, her heart couldn't help but thump. Following the appearance of the lich, the chanting sounds quickly resounded. Immediately after, everyone realized that the skeleton army seemed to have received a huge boost from the chanting and their tyrannical abilities instantly exploded. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others realized that the combat power of the skeleton army had definitely increased, and it wasn't easy to deal with them. Wife, we'll have to rely on you to deal with this lich, Di Beichen said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. If other stronger skeletons appeared, she might be a little worried. However, she wasn't afraid of this lich because her zither technique was coincidentally able to restrain the lich's chanting. However, she also wanted to know how much the strength of these skeletons would increase with 8 liches chanting together. However, at this moment the sound of a flute rang out. This wasn't a simple flute sound. It contained offensive power and directly countered the lich's chanting. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but turn her gaze. Previously, she had only heard that there were very few cultivators who were good at sound attacks in the inner palace. She didn't expect to encounter one right away. Suingxue is actually good at sound attacks? A hint of astonishment appeared in Shangguan Yingying's eyes. She really didn't expect this. Renzime nodded. There aren't many cultivators who are good at sound attacks in the inner palace, and Suingxue is one of them. Ever since everyone knew that sound attacks could restrain the lich's chanting, Suingxue's status in the inner palace greatly increased, and there are many people chasing after her. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang revealed a look of understanding. Encountering a lich was definitely a nightmare for an ordinary party. However, if there was someone in the party who could restrain the lich, the chances of victory would be greatly increased. Hearing Suingxue's low voice, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Even though Suingxue had mastered sound attacks, she was still lacking in this aspect. If it was only 1 or 2 liches, Suingxue would still be able to deal with them, but there were 8 liches and their combined chanting was extremely powerful. It wouldn't be so easy to deal with them. Suingxue held a green flute in her hand, and beautiful sounds kept coming out, affecting the liches chanting. However, she also realized that it was too difficult for her to deal with these 8 liches with her current strength. At most, she could only affect the frequency of their chanting, but it was impossible for her to stop the effect of their chanting. Once a lich appears, only a cultivator skilled in sound attacks will be able to counter it. As He Bingrui spoke, she couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. Yingxue is one of the few cultivators who are skilled in sound attacks in the inner palace. Hearing He Bingrui's words, Renzime and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. Chapter 39-32. Hong Zhuang, from the looks of it, not only has Suingxue not given up on Mo Yunjue, she seems to be even more infatuated with him. Shangguan Yingying's eyes sparkled with interest. Mo Yunjue had always been a bachelor in their team. If she could help Mo Yunjue find a suitable woman, that would be pretty good. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Previously, when Yunju made his move, his swift and decisive style was probably even more attractive to her. It's not strange for her to have such a reaction. No matter if it was in the past or now, Mo Yunjue had always been the object of adoration of many women. Just like Di Beichen, even though she was already by his side, there were still many women who secretly threw flirtatious glances at Di Beichen. They saw all of this, but no one paid any attention to it. Hearing this, Shangguan Yingying curled her lip. Even so, I still feel that Yunju is so outstanding, so there should be a very outstanding woman who is worthy of him. Although this Suingxue looks not bad, she's still a little lacking. Things like love depend on fate. It doesn't have much to do with one's own conditions. As long as they like each other, it's fine, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Her gaze couldn't help but turn towards Mo Yunjue. If Mo Yunjue could really have a woman who could warm him up, that would be extremely good. As if he felt Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Mo Yunjue also turned his gaze over. Those eyes that were as deep as a black hole were still sparkling with deep affection for her, but he suppressed it in the depths of his eyes. To him, no one in this world could compare to Bailey Hongzhuang. She was the only one who was different in this world. Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze. In her heart, she understood that Mo Yunjue still hadn't let go. She still felt indebted to him. Suingxue was waiting for Mo Yunjue to pay attention to her, but never would she have thought that Mo Yunjue would turn his gaze to Bailey Hongzhuang. She couldn't help being stunned, and her expression became complicated. Could it be that Mo Yunjue liked Bailey Hongzhuang? She then looked at Di Beichen, who was standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang, and erased the thought from her mind. Impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang was a married woman, and Mo Yunjue and Di Beichen were friends. It was impossible for something like this to happen. Suingxue tried her best to execute sound attacks, but she realized that the chanting of the liches was simply too strong. She couldn't even suppress a part of it, which was completely different from what she had encountered in the past. There are simply too many liches. Let's retreat a little, Suingxue couldn't help but say. Bailey Hongzhuang also realized that under the chanting of the liches, the normal skeleton's strength had increased by 2 levels. The skeleton soldier's strength had also increased. It seemed that the more liches there were, the more the skeleton's strength would increase. If a large number of liches were to appear, she couldn't imagine the situation. From this scene, she could determine how strong the faction that controlled the power of darkness was. It was no wonder that so many factions had attacked together. Such a faction was a heaven-defying existence the moment it appeared. Other people would have to pay quite a hefty price to recruit cultivators, but they could only summon dead things, so there was no need to worry about that. In comparison, it was as if they had unlimited helpers. It was truly terrifying. Chapter 39-33. Ding! Bailey Hongzhuang waved her 5 fingers and the sound of a zither poured out. Following the sound of the zither, the lich's chanting paused for a moment. Suingxue looked at the source of the sound in astonishment. When she realized that it was Bailey Hongzhuang, her eyes flashed with intense astonishment. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang took 2 steps back and sat between Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue. Her 10 fingers fluttered and the sound of the zither poured out continuously. The crisp sound of the zither was melodious and pleasant to the ears. Compared to the chanting of the lich was suppressed. Under the suppression of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound, the strength of the skeleton, which had increased by 2 levels, was reduced to 1 level. The 8 lich's original target was Suingxue. When they realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was the powerful opponent, they all turned their attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. An endless stream of elemental energy poured into the zither sound. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a hint of sternness. Thinking back, she didn't put too much effort into the art of zither. However, ever since she knew that the art of zither had a restraining effect on the lich, she specially put more effort into it. Now, her art of zither was much more adept than before. In addition to the increase in her strength, the effect naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. As the elemental energy poured in, everyone realized that the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound had increased again. Wherever the sound of the zither passed, the skeletons would turn into ashes as if they had been hit by a heavy blow. Seeing this scene, Di Beichen and the rest had a hint of astonishment in their eyes. They didn't expect that in such a short time, Bailey Hongzhuang's art of zither would have such a huge improvement. How could they not be surprised? Wow, junior sister Bailey's zither sound isn't ordinary this time. It's much more destructive than the previous time. Renzime's face was filled with shock. Before, when she saw that Suingxue was unable to deal with it, she had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Suingxue together would be able to deal with it. But looking at the current situation, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang was alone, she would be able to deal with it. Renzime nodded in admiration. Junior sister Bailey's improvement is indeed astonishing. In such a short time, her battle power is already on a different level. They thought that their improvement was already not bad, but compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, there was still quite a gap. This was the training of geniuses. Su was Bailey Hongzhuang's art of zither sound. Furthermore, from the current situation, it could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang's wasn't ordinary's as music was hers. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, her sound attack was like displaying her slight skill in front of an expert. Her sound attack could only suppress 2 liches at most, but Bailey Hongzhuang could suppress 8 liches at the same time. This showed the difference between the two. Yingxue, I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's art of zither to be so powerful. Isn't this a little too terrifying? He Bingrue was also dumbfounded. She originally thought that Suingxue was the only one in their team who had such an ability, so she could use this chance to perform well. She didn't expect that there would be someone who was so good at art of zither. It was simply an eye-opener. Chapter 39-34. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to cover the chanting and suppress the skeleton army's cultivation. Under her tyrannical elemental energy, the skeleton army in front of her returned to their original state. The skeletons at the back that were closer to the liches were unable to be suppressed. Luckily, everyone was only in contact with the skeletons at the front. Once the skeletons at the back advanced, they would fall into the range of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound. As a result, the skeletons that everyone was fighting with had the same strength as before. There were no changes to the existence of the liches. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound's destructive power was also very strong. A large number of skeletons fell down and it was very shocking. The 3 beasts had also joined the battle once again. Everything was the same as before and there were no changes. When Suingxue saw this scene, she was instantly embarrassed. For a moment, she didn't know if she should continue playing the flute or directly join the battle. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang had already suppressed 8 liches by herself. There was no meaning for her to continue playing the flute. Furthermore, although her flute sound had a certain effect on suppressing the liches chanting, its destructive power wasn't strong and it didn't have a very good effect. After thinking about it, Su Yingxue still silently put away her flute and joined the battle. Wave after wave of skeletons fell down. The points obtained by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were also continuously increasing. Renzime and the rest couldn't help but reveal a smile on their faces. If it was any other time, they could only quickly escape when they encountered such a situation. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were in the team, the situation was completely different. They were completely able to handle such a situation. Furthermore, the speed at which they killed the skeletons was extremely fast. They felt very satisfied. I really hope that I can break through to the Star Radiance realm quickly. This way, we won't have to be so strained to deal with these skeletons like before. Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but express his feelings. Hearing this, Renzime smiled and nodded. That's natural. It's just that it's not that easy to break through to the Star Radiance realm. I hope that we can all reach it as soon as possible. If everyone in their group had reached the Starlight realm, just thinking about the scene of the battle caused them to feel excited. When the 8 liches saw that their chanting was countered by Bailey Hongzhuang, they immediately used all of their skills, hoping to break Bailey Hongzhuang's zither magic. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt this point. The power of the liches singing together was much stronger than the last time. If she hadn't been practicing the zither these days, she probably wouldn't have been able to restrain this scene. To be honest, if she hadn't seen the liches' chanting ability, she wouldn't have thought that there were so many ways to fight with the zither. Come to think of it, this was one of the benefits she learned from the lich. No matter how hard the 8 liches tried, they were unable to break through Bailey Hongzhuang's line of defense. After a fruitless attempt, the 8 liches chose to give up and returned to the pit. Following the retreat of the 8 liches, the skeleton soldiers and skeleton army immediately stopped fighting and began to return to the pit. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest increased their attack power, trying to kill more skeletons. After the living skeletons retreated back into the pit, the ground was once again flat as if nothing had ever happened. Chapter 39-35. As all the skeletons retreated back into the mine, everyone could not help but heave a sigh of relief as they slumped onto the ground. Fortunately, they took the initiative to retreat. Otherwise, if the battle continued at such a high intensity, even I would not be able to hold on. When Xiren could not help but sigh. Although their cultivation had increased slightly compared to before, the strength of these skeletons was not weak either. They had been continuously using martial arts techniques, and the rate at which their yuan qi was depleted was also very fast. During this process, they had even taken elixirs to replenish their yuan qi, but in the end, the supply could not meet the demand. In a short battle, they could still maintain their energetic state, but if the battle dragged on, they would not be able to hold on. After all, the number of skeletons was endless. In terms of taking turns to fight, they definitely could not be compared to these skeletons. Yes, thanks to junior sister Bailey's zither technique, we were able to successfully restrain the 8 liches. They felt that they could not win, so they retreated. Renzime's face was filled with a smile of admiration. Usually, when we fight with these skeletons, they don't leave until dawn. Today can be considered as the easiest battle. It was all thanks to you guys that we were able to do it. The battle power of a Starlight Realm practitioner is indeed extraordinary. It made me envious. Chu Jinfeng sighed. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest smiled slightly. They also felt that today's battle was not bad. Junior sister Bailey, I feel that your zither technique this time seems to be much stronger than before. Renzi Heng could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang with a trace of curiosity in his eyes. Previously, He had seen Bailey Hongzhuang use her zither technique with his own eyes, but it was not as powerful as today. If the zither technique had such an effect, then they would not have been in such a difficult situation. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Ever since the previous incident, I have focused on cultivating the zither technique. During this period of time, it has been quite effective. In addition to the improvement of my cultivation, the effect is naturally much better than before. I see. Ren Ziheng praised. You can even restrain the 8 liches. This is really extraordinary. If it was any other time, we could only surrender when we encountered 8 liches. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were talking, Suingxue and the rest slowly walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Ren Ziheng, thank you for your help this time. Xiao Wenyu clasped his hands and said, Xiao Wenyu, you're too polite. This is what we should do. Ren Ziheng smiled. Xiao Wenyu's eyes turned to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. I have long heard that Di Shidi's strength is extraordinary. Seeing it with my own eyes today is an eye-opener for me. Senior brother Xiao is too praiseworthy. You. Xiao of Bailey's of the zither technique of liches. If I too I of it, I would not believe it. If I of it of Bailey to be. To the two. I just happened to have mastered the zither technique. Fortunately, I was able to help a little. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a lotus-like smile. To them, saving people was just a matter of convenience. Coincidentally, they also wanted to kill skeletons, so they acted together. Chapter 39-36. Following Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest nodded their heads. Since the skeletons didn't get any benefits today, they naturally wouldn't appear in the same place again, so they could relax and have a good rest. Suingxue and He Bingrui looked at each other and slowly walked to a place closer to Liemo and Yunju to sit down. When everyone entered a state of cultivation, Suingxue couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. She saw that Mo Yunjue had already closed his eyes and started to cultivate to recover. Her expression was a little complicated. She was a little shy and a little vexed. She was shy because the person she adored was right beside her, and vexed because Mo Yunjue didn't have any reaction towards her. She clearly knew the meaning behind her purposely sitting closer to Liemo and Yunju, but the latter acted as if he didn't see her, making her feel helpless. Yingxue, as long as Mo Yunjue is a block of ice, he still doesn't have any reaction even though we are already sitting here. He Bingrui frowned, her expression filled with helplessness. Any man would have understood such an obvious gesture of goodwill, but Mo Yunjue acted as if he didn't see it at all, so how could she not feel helpless? That's just how he is. Suingxue sighed. The last time I went to invite him, he was also this cold. He Bingrui's gaze wandered between Mo Yunjue and Suingxue as she slowly said, Sigh, everything about Mo Yunjue is good, but his personality is too cold. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to melt this block of ice. I believe he won't feel nothing. Although his personality is very cold, there are some benefits. This way, he won't be too entangled with other girls, which I think is pretty good. Suingxue's face was filled with a joyful smile. Looking at Mo Yunjue's side profile with his eyes closed, she only felt that he was even more handsome. Everything around her seemed to have faded into the background. Only Mo Yunjue's appearance was deeply imprinted in her heart, causing her heart to beat wildly. In my opinion, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. No matter how bad he is, you still think he's good. But if it really happens, I think you two are very compatible. He Bingrui smiled and said, Why don't you find a chance to have a good chat with him later and get closer to him? Hearing this, Suingxue pondered for a moment before sizing up Mo Yunjue and saying, Let's wait until my essence energy recovers. The thoughts of Suingxue and the rest weren't hidden from everyone's eyes. In fact, based on Suingxue's current performance, everyone knew that her heart was already attached to Mo Yunjue. It was just that Mo Yunjue hadn't expressed his feelings yet. Compared to the joy of Suingxue and the rest, Ziren couldn't help saying, "In my opinion, senior sister Su is probably going to be happy for nothing." "Why?" Shangguan Yingying asked curiously. "Yunju obviously doesn't have any feelings for her. It's just that she can't see it." Ziren shrugged his shoulders. "Although this girl looks pretty good, she's only average. There's obviously a gap between her and Yunju, so such an outcome is very normal." Chapter 39-37. When Ziren subconsciously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Mo Yunjue liked women like Bailey Hongzhuang. Just from this point, it could be seen that Mo Yunjue's taste was not bad. In this world, women as outstanding as Bailey Hongzhuang were rare. Suingxue looked not bad, but if she was compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, she would be thrown far behind. Therefore, since Mo Yunjue liked Bailey Hongzhuang, it could be seen that he would definitely not like Suingxue, unless he was provoked. However, from the current situation, Mo Yunjue was not provoked. On the contrary, he was still very clear-headed, so it was impossible for such a situation to happen. It was a pity that Suingxue did not realize this point. However, from the coldness that Mo Yunjue revealed, it would not take long for Suingxue to realize the truth. Everyone fell into a state of cultivation. And it was just as everyone had expected. The whole night passed peacefully. No more skeleton army came out of the forest. When the sky gradually brightened, everyone opened their eyes one after another. The elemental energy in their body had recovered and their mental state had recovered to its peak. Yesterday we also killed quite a number of skeletons. The number of points is not small, Shangguan Yingying said with a smile. The main reason they came here to train was to obtain points. After all, they could train in other places, but points could only be obtained in the training ground. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Indeed, the harvest is quite bountiful. That's because you guys are here. In addition, there are quite a number of people this time, so there is no need to escape. Therefore, the harvest is not bad. Otherwise, if it was any other day, we would have to retreat after fighting for a while. Naturally, the points would be less. Chu Jinfeng shrugged his shoulders. In the past, it was not easy for them to obtain points. Even if they stayed in the training grounds for half a month, the number of points they obtained was not much. However, this time, with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, the number of points they obtained from this battle was quite a lot. Speaking of which, this was the benefit of having power. Jinfeng is right. If it was any other day, it would take us a few days to earn these points. Ren Zimei chuckled. Looking at your battle power, I really hope that I can break through to the Starlight Realm quickly. At that time, when we meet these damn skeletons, we will not be so restrained. Go for it, Senior Sister Ren, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. Since we have recovered, let's set off. Di Beichen said. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest nodded their heads. The appearance of the skeleton army was random. However, they had suffered a loss this time, so they probably would not appear here again at night. They might as well find a suitable place nearby. All right. Ren Ziheng stood up immediately. Let's go. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were about to leave, Suingxue suddenly stood out and said, Wait. Hearing this voice, everyone could not help but stop in their tracks. They looked at Suingxue in astonishment, not knowing what she wanted to do. Mo Yunjue also looked at Suingxue. A tinge of annoyance flashed past his eyes that were as deep as black holes, but he did not open his mouth. Chapter 39-38. Our team suffered quite a bit of damage after what happened last night, so there are only 6 of us left. If we only rely on the few of us, it will be very dangerous here. Suingxue bit her lips with a bashful expression. I have a presumptuous request. I wonder if I can form a team with you guys for the time being? Seeing this, He Bingrue immediately said, Yingxue is right. We won't be able to find other teams in such a short period of time, so it's really dangerous here with only 6 people. If you guys don't mind, can you form a team with us for the time being? As she said this, He Bingrue couldn't help but give a look to the leader of their team, Xiao Wenyu. Xiao Wenyu was still in a daze at first, but he immediately reacted and nodded his head. Ren Ziheng, we didn't expect to encounter such a situation yesterday and lose nearly half of our members. If you guys don't mind, can you help us? We definitely won't cause any trouble. He didn't expect Suing Xue to take the initiative to mention this matter, but after thinking about it carefully, if they could really form a team with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, it would undoubtedly be great. After all, there were 3 Starlight Realm cultivators in the team, so their battle power would greatly increase and their safety would be guaranteed. Just like what Ren Zimei and the rest had said, if it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2, they would definitely have been forced to flee in all directions by the skeletons. It would have been impossible for them to earn more points, and it would have been good enough if they didn't get injured. It was because of this that he envied Ren Zimei and the rest. It was a pity that he wasn't familiar with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, so he couldn't form a team with them. Since Suing Xue had suggested this, he naturally didn't mind going with the flow. If they agreed, it would be beneficial for them. Hearing Xiao Wenyu's words, Ren Ziheng couldn't help but frown. He didn't expect them to come up with such a suggestion. He couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, asking, "What do you guys think?" Although he was in the same team as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, and as the senior brother, he was also the team leader in name. They knew clearly that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were the backbone of the team. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and their expressions were a bit complicated. They weren't stupid. Suing Xue suddenly mentioning this matter might be because of safety, but the main reason was that she wanted to get close to Mo Yunjue. This way, they couldn't make a decision for Mo Yunjue. After all, the other party had come for Mo Yunjue and had nothing to do with them. Looks like this senior sister Su is quite persistent. Shangguan Yinging lowered her voice and sighed in Bailey Hongzhuang's ear. Isn't it said that her standards are very high, and that she usually ignores all men trying to please her? Why does it look completely different now? That's because the man chasing after her isn't that outstanding. If it was Mo Yunjue, the situation would be different. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Mo Yunjue was naturally not someone an ordinary man could compare to. This Suing Xue was also courageous to chase after someone she liked. Di Beichen and the rest fell into silence. Suing Xue and the rest couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. They naturally understood that Mo Yunjue's attitude was the most important. Chapter 39-39. Suing Xue's gaze towards Mo Yunjue was filled with anticipation, and her heart was beating wildly. This was the first time she had taken the initiative, and she had no choice. It was not easy for her to have the chance to interact with Mo Yunjue, and if she missed it just like that, who knew when she would be able to find such a chance again? Compared to Suing Xue's anticipation, Mo Yunjue's expression was only cold. "Junior brother Mo, what do you think?" Ren Ziheng asked with some difficulty. It wasn't that he wanted to push the problem to Mo Yunjue, but since Mo Yunjue didn't express his opinion, he didn't know how to answer. In fact, whether Suing Xue and the rest were there or not didn't affect him at all. "We already have quite a number of people in our team," Di Beichen said indifferently. The moment he said that, Suing Xue and the rest couldn't help being stunned. Even though Mo Yunjue didn't reject them directly, what was the difference between that and rejecting them directly? Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other in dismay. They had not underestimated the degree to which Mo Yunjue didn't give them any face. Suing Xue would definitely feel terrible to be rejected so directly. Suing Xue's face turned pale. Even though she had thought that Mo Yunjue might not have any feelings for her, she didn't expect Mo Yunjue to reject her so straightforwardly. No matter what, she was still a woman, and he should at least give her some face when rejecting her. However, Mo Yunjue wasn't even willing to give her face. He Bingrue's expression also became ugly, and her gaze towards Mo Yunjue was filled with indignation. "Mo Yunjue, We are from the same sect after all. Can't we just help? Even though our abilities can't be compared to yours, we won't be a burden. As long as we find another team, we will immediately leave. You don't have to be so petty, right? With He Bingrue's words, the atmosphere immediately changed. No one had thought that He Bingrue would suddenly explode. It had completely exceeded their expectations. However, in the face of He Bingrue's anger, Mo Yunjue acted as if nothing she said was directed at him. His expression was still cold and casual. To him, these people in front of him were just strangers. There was no need for him to pay attention to them. When Ren Ziheng saw this scene, he couldn't help but say, "Junior Marshal sister, calm down." Junior Marshal brother Mo just casually said something. "You don't have to be so angry." However, He Bingrue's anger had been completely ignited, and it wouldn't dissipate for a while. "What I said is the truth. The cultivators of Penglai Palace have always helped each other in this training ground. He is a man, but he is so stingy. How can I not be angry?" He Bingrue's face was filled with anger, and her chest heaved up and down. According to her thoughts, no matter how she looked at it, Mo Yunjue couldn't possibly refuse. However, this guy actually did. "Ren Ziheng, we have no choice but to make this presumptuous request. We really don't have any other thoughts." Xiao Wenyu couldn't help but speak up. Normally, it wasn't easy to earn points, and he wasn't willing to give up such a good opportunity. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were currently in the limelight. If they could be on good terms with them, it would be a great thing. Chapter 39-40. After noticing Ren Ziheng's helpless look, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but say, "Senior brother Ren, you're our team leader. We'll leave it to you to decide whether to agree or not. We have no objections." To them, rejecting He Bingrue and the others had no effect at all. If they wanted to reject, they would reject. After all, there was no friendship between them. However, Ren Ziheng was different from them. Ren Ziheng and the other two had stayed in Penglai Inner Hall for a long time and were very familiar with the cultivators in the hall. They must have a certain friendship with Xiao Wenyu and the others. If they rejected at this time, it would undoubtedly damage their friendship. On the contrary, whether Xiao Wenyu and the others followed them or not didn't have any effect on them. It was better to leave the decision to Ren Ziheng. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. She saw that Mo Yunjue's expression was gentle. As long as it was Bailey Hongzhuang's decision, he didn't have any objections. She then turned her gaze to Di Beichen. Di Beichen also nodded quietly. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ren Ziheng couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang gratefully. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't said such words, he would really be at a loss today. "If that's the case, let's team up for the time being," Ren Ziheng said. As soon as he said that, Xiao Wenyu's face also revealed a smile. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "Thank you. We definitely won't cause any trouble." "You're welcome." Ren Ziheng cupped his fists and said, "Xiao Wenyu, with your strength, you can handle things independently. Naturally, you won't cause any trouble." Then, everyone set off on their journey together. However, compared to the joy of Xiao Wenyu and the others in the team, Suing Xue and He Bingrue didn't have such feelings. Both of them were extremely depressed. Suing Xue lowered her head along the way. She didn't expect that her initiative to treat him with such infatuation would only be met with Mo Yunjue's indifference and disdain. He actually rejected him so straightforwardly. Even if he was just a cultivator he had never met before, he shouldn't have such an attitude. "Bingrue, do you think Mo Yunjue hates me?" Suing Xue's beautiful face was slightly pale, and her hands clenched into fists under her sleeves. An indescribable feeling of grievance and unwillingness exploded in her heart. He Bingrue's expression was also very complicated. Previously they had thought of everything very well, but Mo Yunjue's attitude just now had undoubtedly poured a bucket of cold water on them, causing their hearts to turn cold. "I don't know either." He Bingrue shook her head. Perhaps this has always been his personality. However, isn't this a little too cold? Moreover, he doesn't give any face to women at all. It's no wonder that so many women in the inner palace have expressed their goodwill, but none of them have succeeded. Come to think of it, there shouldn't be many women who can withstand Mo Yunjue's cold treatment and still remain passionate. Previously, she only felt that Mo Yunjue's personality was cold, and there was also some arrogance in it. After all, geniuses were arrogant. However, from the situation just now, Mo Yunjue was completely unapproachable. Suingshu sighed. Indeed, it's hard to imagine why he would be so cold. Luckily, he's not only like this to me. Chapter 39-41. Hearing He Bingrue's words, doubt flashed through Suingshue's eyes. That's right, from their actions their relationship seems to be very good. Mo Yunjue isn't so cold when he's talking to other people. On the contrary, he seems to be very easy to get along with. He Bingrue nodded. Just now, Mo Yunjue had already rejected us, but when Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, he didn't refute at all. On the contrary, he seemed to agree with Bailey Hongzhuang's decision. It's really inconceivable. I really don't understand this. Suingshu frowned. She couldn't help but think of the gaze Mo Yunjue had when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She couldn't help but lower her voice. Bingrue, do you think Mo Yunjue likes Bailey Hongzhuang? He Bingrue couldn't help but be stunned. She then shook her head. How is that possible? If that's really the case, then Mo Yunjue and Di Beichen are love rivals. How can they get along so well? Then why is Mo Yunjue so nice to Bailey Hongzhuang? Suingshu was a little jealous. If Mo Yunjue's attitude was cold to all women, it would be fine. However, not only was he not cold to Bailey Hongzhuang, he was very gentle instead. She couldn't see any trace of coldness, which made her a little gloomy. I heard that it's hard for people with such cold personalities to become friends with others. However, once they become friends, they treat each other with absolute sincerity. Come to think of it, this is the reason why Mo Yunjue is so nice to Bailey Hongzhuang. Furthermore, from what I see, not only is he nice to Bailey Hongzhuang, his attitude towards Shangguan Yingying is also very friendly. Don't let your imagination run wild, He Bingrue said. Hearing He Bingrue's words, the gloominess in Suingshue's heart lessened. You're right. If everything is as you say, then I can't give up. If I can really walk into Mo Yunjue's heart, then he will definitely treat me very well, right? He Bingrue frowned and said hesitantly, even if that's the case, it's not an easy thing to walk into his heart. You have to be mentally prepared. This fellow didn't give any face when he rejected people. That kind of rejection wasn't a good feeling. If it happened a few more times, her courage would be destroyed. I can do it. Suingshue's heart, Suingshu nodded her head. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest can do it, I believe I can do it too. Looking at Suingshue's confident look, He Bingrue's expression became complicated, but she could only agree helplessly. Good luck. She had been friends with Suingshu for so many years, so she naturally understood Suingshue's personality very well. Usually, men would fight to coax her, so she was already used to such treatment. Now that she was rejected by the other party, she might be able to accept it once or twice, but if it happened too many times, she definitely wouldn't be able to accept it. However, looking at Suingshue's excited expression, she didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to Mo Yunjue's side with an apologetic smile on her exquisite face. Yunjue, I'm sorry. Did my decision bring you trouble? Chapter 39-42. In the end, this trouble was caused by me. Instead, it was me who made things difficult for you. Mo Yunjue's expression was gentle. His deep and dark eyes lit up the moment he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. In this world, only Bailey Hongzhuang was his ray of sunshine. She was his sun. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression relaxed a little. Actually, this matter doesn't affect us much. It's just that senior brother Ren and Xiao Wenyu seem to have known each other for a long time. It's not good for senior brother Ren to reject him like this. However, since you're so handsome, it's normal for you to attract the admiration of girls. If this is considered trouble, I'm sure many people would want to get into trouble like this. Mo Yunjue chuckled. Unfortunately, I don't think so. To him, other than Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't want anyone else. Everyone else was just a burden. If there wasn't anyone else, he would feel more at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If these words were said by another man, she might not believe them. However, since this person was Mo Yunjue, she believed them. With Mo Yunjue's cold personality, getting close to an ordinary person would be troublesome for him. Thinking back, when she first met Mo Yunjue, he was clearly seriously injured. However, he still looked indifferent, as if life and death didn't affect him much. She never thought that their accidental acquaintance would end up like this. Seeing Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang chatting happily, Suingshue's expression couldn't help but become complicated. This was because she noticed that Mo Yunjue's smile towards Bailey Hongzhuang was indescribably gentle. Compared to his usual cold appearance, he was like a completely different person when facing Bailey Hongzhuang. It was unbelievable. Suingshue kept getting rid of the thought that shouldn't have appeared in her mind, but it still popped up uncontrollably. Could Mo Yunjue be so nice to everyone he was familiar with? However, she clearly felt that the way Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang was exactly the same as the way she looked at him. At this moment, Di Beichen slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face was somewhat heavy. He looked at Mo Yunjue and said, "Yunjue, Hongzhuang and I have a guess." Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's face flashed with a hint of seriousness. "What guess?" There must be a reason why the skeleton army suddenly had such a huge improvement. It's impossible for them to improve so much for no reason. Therefore, we feel that something incredible must have appeared in this training ground and accelerated the evolution of the skeletons. Mo Yunjue pondered and nodded. What you said makes sense. It's impossible for them to improve for no reason. What do you think it is? We haven't thought of this point yet, but if it appeared, it must be in this training ground, Di Beichen said solemnly. So you guys plan to look around here? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows slightly, immediately understanding the meaning of Di Beichen's words. Di Beichen nodded. That's right. Since we're already here, why don't we look around first? All right. Mo Yunjue agreed. If it's something bad, it's better to eliminate it as soon as possible. Otherwise, if we let these skeletons continue to evolve, it will be even harder to deal with them in the future. Chapter 39-43. When Xiren, Shangguan Yingying, and the others agreed with Bailey Hongzhuang's idea. These skeletons were like monsters and had inexplicably evolved. There must be some sort of treasure that had appeared. Although not a single blade of grass grew in this training ground, it was really hard to imagine the existence of heavenly treasures here. However, since such a change had occurred, there must be some. However, they would only know what it was after they saw it with their own eyes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others thought of this, they didn't make too much noise. After all, before they found the item, they couldn't make a conclusion. They only paid close attention as they walked. Although Xiao Wenyu and the others felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were acting a little strange, as if they were looking for something, they didn't ask too much. After all, in this training ground, other than skeletons, there was nothing else. Suingshue followed Mo Yunjue, thinking about how to get closer to Mo Yunjue. Thus, her gaze was locked onto Mo Yunjue the entire time. However, Mo Yunjue was still cold towards Suingshue. He also ignored her gaze, causing Suingshue to have no chance to speak. Finally, Suingshue gathered her courage and walked in front of Mo Yunjue, saying, "Junior Mo." Hearing this, Mo Yunjue only looked at Suingshue indifferently and raised his eyebrows, silently asking what was the matter. Seeing Mo Yunjue like this, Suingshue's smile was a little awkward. Speaking of which, she was indeed fine and didn't know what to say. I heard that when you came to Penglai Island from the outside world, you went straight to the Devil Training Tower? Suing Shua hurriedly composed her words and said. Mo Yunjua nodded and replied indifferently. I didn't expect you to be able to obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Tower so quickly. You're really amazing. Although Mo Yunjua only replied with two N's, Suing Shua wasn't discouraged. After all, there was a reply. With Mo Yunjua's personality, this was already not bad. Junior Mo, do you need something? Mo Yunjua asked in return, impatience in the depths of his eyes. No. Suing Shua replied awkwardly. Mo Yunjua then retracted his gaze and continued to look straight ahead. And Suing Shua was too embarrassed to speak again. His attitude must be because he found her annoying? Thinking of this, Suing Shua felt gloomy. She just wanted to find a chance to chat with Mo Yunjua and get closer to him. She didn't expect him to have such an attitude, which made her feel extremely awkward. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also didn't miss this scene, and their hearts were somewhat moved. It's not easy for Suing Shua for Yunju to reject her so straightforwardly. Ziren shook his head and sighed. It's said that when a man pursues a woman, there's a mountain between them, but when a woman pursues a man, there's a layer of gauze between them. However, I feel that it's not that simple when it comes to Yunju. Shangguan Yingying nodded in agreement. This is for normal men. Yunju is a real ice cube. How could it be so easy to melt him? In my opinion, if a woman wants to move Yunju, she would have to pester him relentlessly. Otherwise, it's impossible to succeed. Chapter 39-44. Shangguan Yingying shot a glance at Ziren. According to what you said, wouldn't the woman who could chase after Yunjue be extremely thick-skinned? I don't know if she's thick-skinned or not, but if she's the one chasing after him, it's definitely impossible for her to be thin-skinned. Ziren shrugged his shoulders. Actually, he understood that the other party had to be at the right time, the right place, and the right people to appear. Now, Suing Shua obviously didn't have the right time, the right place, and the right people. Mo Yunjua's heart was still on Bailey Hongzhuang, so how could she possibly succeed? Bing Rui. Suing Shua returned to He Bingrui's side with a complicated and defeated expression. Was my flirting too much of a failure? He Bingrui shook her head. Didn't you already guess that it would be like this? Just get used to it. But, in front of so many people, I feel so embarrassed. Suing Shua couldn't help but look around, her expression filled with worry and shyness. As a woman, chasing after someone wasn't something to be proud of. Furthermore, the other party had rejected her so straightforwardly. Normally, she had always had the attitude of a proud daughter of heaven. Now that she was like this, who knew what everyone would think if this was spread back? That can't be helped. He Bingrui spread out her hands. Mo Yunjua is like this. Didn't those women who were rejected by him act like this too? But, Yingxue, if you really don't have confidence, then forget it. Normally, there are quite a number of men who chase after you. Although they aren't as outstanding as Mo Yunjua, they aren't bad either. At least if you follow them, you won't have to suffer like this, He Bingrui advised. She could see that although Mo Yunjua was outstanding, he wasn't easy to chew. If she could be together with him, she would definitely be the target of envy. However, if she didn't succeed, the process wouldn't be pleasant. But none of them can compare to Mo Yunjua. Suing Shua bit her lips. There were countless women in the inner and outer halls who admired Mo Yunjua. If she could become Mo Yunjua's sweetheart, she would definitely become the object of envy of everyone. Moreover, Mo Yunjua was not only handsome, but also powerful. Being by his side gave her a sense of security. As long as she thought of this, Suing Shua was unwilling to give up. Seeing Suing Shua like this, He Bingrui couldn't help sighing. Her imagination was beautiful, but it wasn't that easy to succeed. Forget it. Yingxue, do as you see fit. He Bingrui's expression was helpless. If you really succeed, Then no one in Penglai Palace will dare to bully you in the future. Suing Shua nodded. Let me try again. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest searched along the way, but they didn't see anything special. Wherever they looked, there was nothing but bare ground, which made them feel helpless. I don't know what it is, but there's nothing around here. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Not only was she looking for the thing that caused the skeletons to evolve, she was also looking for something that could restrain the power of darkness. Unfortunately, she didn't find anything along the way. Chapter 39:45. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. I'm really curious, what kind of things can be produced in this training ground? This world is so magical, anything can be produced. Anything that appears in this place full of dark energy must be related to dark energy. I just hope it's not something evil. Di Beichen sighed. I hope so. Bailey Hongzhuang replied. But this training ground is very large. If this thing is hidden very well, it won't be easy to find it in a short time. Indeed. A smile appeared on Di Beichen's lips. We are just passing by to take a look. If we can find it, that would be the best. If we can't find it, if there really is such a thing, others will definitely notice it. That's true. Bailey Hongzhuang's mood suddenly relaxed a little. There were many cultivators who came to this training ground. Someone would definitely notice it. Xiao Wenyu noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were looking around as they walked. He couldn't help but look at Ren Ziheng and asked, Ren Ziheng, what are you looking for? Hearing this, Ren Ziheng smiled slightly. Nothing, we're just looking around. Xiao Wenyu looked at Ren Ziheng suspiciously. Apparently, he did not believe his answer, but in his heart, he could not understand. There was nothing else in this place. What could Bailey Hongzhuang and her party be looking for? Noticing the suspicious look on Xiao Wenyu's and the rest's faces, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but explain, They're helping me look for something. Xiao Wenyu was a little surprised. I wonder what junior sister Bailey is looking for? Why don't we help look for it too? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Actually, I don't know what I'm looking for either. Hearing this, Xiao Wenyu and the rest couldn't help but be stunned. Disbelief was written all over their faces. Junior sister Bailey, what do you mean? I don't understand. I'm just wondering what kind of medicine can restrain the power of darkness. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. According to my judgment, this thing should be growing in the training grounds. It's a pity that there's nothing else here other than the soil. But I still haven't given up, so I want to look around. Everyone in Penglai Palace already knew that she made healing medicine. This reason was also the most convincing at this moment. Sure enough, when Bailey Hongzhuang said this, Xiao Wenyu and the others immediately understood. I see. Xiao Wenyu showed a look of understanding. Junior sister Bailey is really a genius doctor. No one in Penglai Palace has been able to develop such a healing medicine for so many years. Junior sister Bailey was able to develop it so quickly. I believe you will be able to find a way to completely restrain it. Senior brother Xiao, you flatter me. Bailey Hongzhuang clasped her hands together. I'm also trying to think of a way to find the catalyst. Then I'll also pay attention to it. I hope I can be of help. Thank you. Withdrawing her gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but raise her eyebrows at Di Beichen. Her expression revealed a bit of playfulness and pride. My wife's means of scaring people have become more and more refined recently. Di Beichen praised. Chapter 39:46. In the next 2 days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were safe and sound. They did not see the skeleton army. Regarding this, no one was too happy, especially Xiao Wenyu and the rest. They wanted to use this opportunity to follow Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest to earn more points, but they did not expect that they would not meet the skeleton army. Naturally, this idea did not succeed. It was a pity. However, during these 2 days they did meet some cultivators from other teams. Unfortunately, they were not from Penglai Palace but from other factions. After everyone met, they did not say anything and just went their separate ways. After all, as long as there were no past grudges, no one was willing to cause more trouble here. I didn't expect our luck to be so good these few days. We didn't meet the skeleton army again. He Bingrue could not help but sigh. Every time she came to this training ground, she couldn't help but be on tenterhooks. After all, the slightest carelessness could cause her to lose her life here. Thus, every time she passed a day without incident, she felt extremely lucky. Maybe the skeleton army knows how powerful Junior Brother D and the rest are, so they didn't dare to show themselves these 2 days, Xiao Wenyu joked. It's just a coincidence, D Baichen said. Although the probability of meeting the skeleton army here is very high, it's not something you can meet every day. Indeed, but we have been here for so long and have not met the thing that junior sister Bailey is looking for. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled with an indifferent expression. I'm just looking for it on the way. I also know that it's not easy to find this thing. The people from 100 Flowers Gate have not found it after searching for so long, so how could I find it so easily? That's true. The people from 100 Flowers Gate have always been searching for something in this training ground. However, after so long, they have not found anything. Could it be that there is nothing? Xiao Wenyu asked curiously. From what I see, I'm afraid there is nothing. He Bingrue said, not a single blade of grass grows in this place. Other than soil, there are only skeletons and bones. How could there be anything growing here? Suingshu also agreed. This does not seem like a place where there would be a guiding herb. It doesn't matter if you can't find it. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was bright and sunny, and her posture was natural and unrestrained. I just think that everything grows according to its own laws. Usually, the guiding drug will appear where it is produced. However, there are always accidents, and I can't be sure. Junior Sister Bailey, I think you should start from other places. Even if you go around the entire training ground, I'm afraid it will be useless. Suingshu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with jealousy in the depths of her eyes. In the past 2 days, she had been looking for opportunities to communicate with Mo Yunjue. Unfortunately, Mo Yunjue could not be bothered with her. On the contrary, Mo Yunjue treated Bailey Hongzhuang extremely well. Although she did not have any evidence, she instinctively felt that Mo Yunjue treated Bailey Hongzhuang differently. This was because when Mo Yunjue had communicated with Shangguan Yingying, his gaze had not been gentle at all. It was obvious that Mo Yunjue had a better relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang. This was a woman's intuition. Chapter 3947. As she spoke, Suingshu couldn't help but give He Bingrue a look. He Bingrue immediately said, Yeah, it's useless for us to walk around here. Why don't we stop and rest here? In the past 2 days, in fact, they didn't need to walk around at all, but because Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to find the guiding herbs, they had been wandering around the area, but they didn't have any results. To them, this kind of aimless walking was purely a waste of time. After all, skeletons wouldn't appear during the day at all. Normally, they would rest together during the day, but now that they were in a team with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they had no choice but to follow them. Hearing He Bingrue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Baichen. She could also vaguely feel that Suingshu and He Bingrue's words were directed at her. However, as a cultivator, walking this path shouldn't be tiring. Moreover, finding the guiding herb was just a side trip. Their main goal was to find the thing that caused the skeletons to evolve. Senior Sister He, if you want to rest, then rest here. We'll look around again, Bailey Hongzhuang said. If you want to look around, then look around. The rest of us will rest here. After saying that, He Bingrue directly sat down on the ground. Clearly, she didn't plan to continue searching around here. After He Bingrue sat down, Suingshu also sat down. She was a little dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Clearly, finding the guiding herb was only Bailey Hongzhuang's task, but she had to drag so many people to help her. It must be known that even if the medicinal catalyst was found, only Bailey Hongzhuang could get the benefit. It was said that this time, Bailey Hongzhuang gave the prescription of the healing medicine to Penglai Palace and obtained a lot of benefits from it. Looking at He Bingrui and Suing Xue's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care. She immediately continued walking forward with Di Beichen and the others. They had their own plans, and since Suing Xue and the rest weren't their teammates, they naturally couldn't force them. Xiao Wenyu felt helpless when he saw what Suing Xue and the other man did. In fact, he also hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to find a medicine that could restrain the dark energy. Although they would not be able to gain any benefits from the prescription, if Bailey Hongzhuang could concoct such a medicine, it would be greatly beneficial to them. Moreover, if they could help find her, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely remember their kindness. Many cultivators were willing to accept the kindness of a genius doctor. However, it was a pity that Suing Xue and Li Mu were delicate people to begin with. Now that they were quarreling like this, he couldn't ignore his teammates, so he could only stop helplessly. Ren Ziheng and the rest couldn't help looking at one another. Over the past 2 days, everyone had gotten along pretty well, so they hadn't expected Suing Xue and Qin Wentian to suddenly throw a tantrum. They were here to help Xiao Wenyu and the others. Since the other party had decided to stop and rest, they let them be. After all, they couldn't be blamed for this. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen took a step forward, Ren Ziheng and the rest followed. Chapter 39-48. This was because they realized that everyone in Bailey Hongzhuang's team had left with her. From the start to the end, Bailey Hongzhuang did not say a single word. She did not even open her mouth to explain, and the others just followed her. This scene was completely different from what the two of them had imagined. For a moment, the two of them were dumbfounded. When Xiao Wenyu saw this scene, he felt extremely helpless. He had long realized that in this team, although Ren Ziheng was the leader in name, the real leader was not Di Beichen or Mo Yunjue, but Bailey Hongzhuang. There were only 3 Starlight Realm cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang was Di Beichen's wife, so it was needless to say that Di Beichen would protect her. As a man, Mo Yunjue would naturally give in to Bailey Hongzhuang. Under such circumstances, it was naturally Bailey Hongzhuang who made the decision. Now that it was Bailey Hongzhuang who was looking for something, the people in their team naturally did not have any complaint. All of you are leaving? Suing Xue could not help but feel anxious when she saw this scene. This was not what she had expected. She only hoped that after her and He Bingrui's suggestion, everyone would agree with them and stay. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang would lose some face and Suing Xue's heart would feel a little better. However, not only did she not lose face for Bailey Hongzhuang, she lost face for herself instead. Hearing Suing Xue's words, Ren Zimei could not help but reply, "We plan to continue searching. You guys can rest here. We will come back later to reconcile with you guys." "If all of you leave just like that, what will happen to us?" Suing Xue could not help but ask. "What do you mean?" "This. If we meet with danger, we don't have enough people." When she said this, Ren Zimei and the rest looked at each other and asked, "Then what do you think we should do?" Suing Xue was a little embarrassed. She naturally hoped that everyone would stay behind and let Bailey Hongzhuang search alone, but she obviously couldn't say that out loud. What Xue means is that we don't have enough people here. If we encounter any danger, we might not be able to handle it. Why don't you leave behind a Star Radiance Realm cultivator? That way we will have more protection. He Bingrui immediately helped Suing Xue smooth things over. Suing Xue nodded her head repeatedly and praised He Bingrui's quick thinking. "That's right. That's what I meant." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. There were only 3 of them in the group who were at the Astral Radiance Realm. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were a pair, so they naturally couldn't be separated. Obviously, the person He Bingrui was referring to was Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue was obviously aware of this, but he didn't pay any attention to it. He walked forward and told everyone his decision with his actions. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest also ignored her. Although Suing Xue didn't have any major problems, she had quite a bit of princess syndrome. There was really no need for them to serve her. Shangguan Yingying and the rest's faces turned cold. They weren't stupid and naturally understood Suing Xue's original plan. They couldn't help but find it laughable. He was just an outsider, yet he wanted to separate their group. It was simply a fantasy. Chapter 39-49. When Suing Xue and the rest saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest leave without a care, their faces instantly turned ugly. Ying Xue, Bingrue, what are you doing? Xiao Wenyu frowned and looked at Suing Xue and He Bingrue in confusion. He couldn't understand their actions at all. Nothing, I just feel that it's meaningless to walk around like this. Rather than that, why don't we rest here for a while so that we can be in better condition at night? Suing Xue said angrily. When she thought of Mo Yunjue's cold appearance, she couldn't help but feel gloomy. She was about to die from anger. Hearing this, Xiao Wenyu sighed. There's no point in telling me these excuses. Isn't it all for junior brother Mo? From what I see, junior brother Mo isn't someone who can be moved so easily. I think you shouldn't waste your efforts. As a man, he understood how a man felt the most. Although Xiao Wenyu wasn't familiar with Mo Yunjue, he could tell from Mo Yunjue's actions that he wasn't interested in Suing Xue at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have acted like this. How do you know? He Bingrue retorted. Maybe Mo Yunjue is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He just doesn't show it. That's all I have to say. If you don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. I just hope that you don't keep hitting a wall. Furthermore, if you really like a man, your actions won't make him like you. On the contrary, you'll only make him hate you. I advise you not to use this method in the future. After saying this, Xiao Wenyu didn't wait for He Bingrue and Suing Xue to reply. He immediately closed his eyes and started cultivating. He was very clear that it was meaningless to argue with women. He just said what he wanted to say. Seeing Xiao Wenyu like this, Suing Xue and He Bingrue looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with indignation. I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a high position in their team. Our actions have indeed miscalculated. He Bingrue couldn't help but say. Suing Xue nodded, indeed, but I believe that we will find a way. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest walked a distance away, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but say, Suing Xue and He Bingrue really think that they're important. They actually want us to stay behind to accompany them. Dream. I don't have a good influence on them to begin with. And now they did this. Could it be that they think that in our hearts, her position is more important than Hong? Ren Zimei also nodded helplessly. Suing Xue indeed has the temper of a young lady. The things she does make people feel helpless. In my opinion, we should just ignore them and not go back. It's best if they encounter the skeleton army at night. Let's see if she can still throw a tantrum, Shangguan Yingying said coldly. That's that. Xiao He nodded her head in agreement. She then jumped onto Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue, I don't have a good impression of Suing Xue. Don't fall for her. Xiao He. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately pulled Xiao He back. Why are you getting involved in this matter?